Welcome to What a Creep, the show with Margot Donohue and Sonia Mansfield, talking about creeps from the past to the present.
This is your quick guide to the biggest creeps, jerks, assholes, and losers, the best of the worst.
From two nice ladies who want the world to be a little less creepy. Welcome back to What a Creep. This is Margot Donohue, and my cohort in creepitude, as always, is the amazing Sonia Mansfield. Hey, Sonia.
Hello, my friend.
Hello, my friend. We are the podcast that talks about creeps from the past to the present. Today's episode is really interesting because there is a movie coming out very soon by Mr. Martin Scorsese that's about this topic. It's based on a book, and it's going to be released on Apple Plus pretty soon. So if you can't get to the theater, so there's an opportunity to see this very soon. I've been hearing nothing but great things about this movie. And the more I learn about the movie, the more I want to learn about the true story. So it's a true story that we're talking about.
Story.
Just keep that in mind. But we were just saying off the air, like, I'm really working to not sound culturally insensitive. As a white person, I want to make sure that I'm proper. So if I use words sometimes and you're wondering, like, if I'm not saying Native American or Indigenous, sometimes I'm talking about a particular proclamation that the government made, or I'm quoting actual text. Yes. So just to keep that in mind, we're being very sensitive to what we're being talked about today. You can follow us on Facebook. We do have a basic Facebook page, but that's where people usually go to complain about our language. We use salty language in this program, so if you're traveling with your kids, you probably want to think twice about that. Or not.
Yeah, fuck it.
We also have a private Facebook group, which is where you and I are much more interactive. So join the What a Creep podcast group. You do have to answer a few questions to come on in. Just give it your best shot. Don't ignore it. Yes. Just give it your best shot.
Yeah, and if you don't act like a creep, you can stay.
Absolutely. We're on Twitter at CreepPod as long as that exists, because someone had it for CreepPod, What a Creep, on Twitter for over 10 years and never used it. So we just snagged CreepPod. Creep. We are at What a Creep on Threads, on Instagram, and that's our site is What a Creep Podcast. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's working.
And it is working. We're really excited about that. We also have an old-timey email. You can send suggestions for creeps and non-creeps. We're always looking for those, especially. And we love it when you guys get excited about those in the Facebook group. With everything happening in the news lately, it's lovely to talk about people who are not creeps. Our email is whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com. And if you would like some stickers, and I've had a few people ask this past week, yes, I will drop those stickers in the mail for you. Just because we just love y'all. That's all.
Yeah.
So you tell them.
Somebody,
go ahead.
No, I was going to say somebody sent us a code to get What a Creep on Blue Sky.
Yes.
Super appreciate that. I will set that up this weekend. So thank you for that. And I think you were going to ask me about the website. You could go to whatacreeppodcast.com, and it's everything you ever wanted to know about our podcast, but we're afraid to ask. It is working.
Yay!
I fixed it. So it is updated. It has links to all of our past episodes, and in each of those posts you can go in and it's all of our show notes, because we source every single thing we do. We're not making this shit up. It's a true story. Every episode is actually a true story. So you could go in, see where we got our sources. It's a great place to do a deeper dive on anybody that we're talking about, or anything, any subject, any topic we're talking about. Great place to start. There's also a link to our Substack if you want to sign up for our Substack. And
that's free.
It's free. It's a monthly newsletter. It's just like updates about creeps in the news, hints at what's to come, our recs for like what we're reading, watching, listening to. So things from our other podcast, Dorking Out, you could do that. There's also a link to our merch shop where you get t-shirts and tote bags and face masks and all the good things. We can testify the shirts are very, very cozy. And there's a link to our Patreon. You want to tell them about that, Margot?
Yes, Patreon. That is where we put our first 8 seasons. We're on season 21 right now.
Woo! It's old enough to drink.
It's old enough to drink now. So we have the first 8 seasons there. Plus we put out 2 bonus episodes a month. And sometimes we post an episode that an hour later we found out that somebody we thought was great was turned out to be a total asshole. Mary Lou Retton.
Sad trombone. We do the best we can, folks.
We do hope she pulls through, by the way. Like, yes. It's not about that. But anyway, so yes, thank you to I'm sorry, I pronounced this before, Likey or Licky. It's Lykke. Thank you. They just rejoined. So thank you so much for doing that. We really appreciate it. And just helps with the cost for all the subscriptions that we have and yada, yada, yada.
All these news sources.
Yep.
So thank you.
So thank you. All right. We will dive right in today's show. Sonia, I was going to ask you, do you know anything about this movie that's coming out? It's Killers of the Flower Moon.
I know that it has Leonardo DiCaprio in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's directed by Martin Scorsese. That's it.
That's all you need to know. We can go forward. In the movie Killers of the Flower Moon, directed by Martin Scorsese and based on David Grann's book. He was with the New Yorker. The story of the Osage indigenous tribes' reign of terror in Oklahoma during the early 20th century is portrayed. In this episode, we will delve into one of the earliest cases investigated by the newly formed. It was called Bureau of Investigations. It's really the FBI, which unfortunately botched the investigation. We also discuss how these crimes have affected the victims and their descendants for over a century. Sources for this episode, we have, of course, the Osage Murders Wikipedia page, Killers of the Flower Moon by David Grann, Oklahoma Historical Society, National Geographic, PBS Short Film Festival, OsageNation.gov, FamousTrials.com, that's a really good one, NPR, Fresh Air, Britannica, Oxygen TV, the History Channel, All That Is Interesting, Historical G-Men, Just the Facts, The Tales of True Cops and Criminals by Jim Doherty, Atlas Obscura, some very rare photos, really cool. The YouTube channel called the 1920s channel that I'm really into right now, and Rolling Stone.
Good
All
job,
right.
friend. That's a lot.
It was a lot to go through. So we'll just start with, how do we even describe like the colonization of America and what happened to indigenous people?
We're the worst.
This happens around the world, by the way. It's not that
Yes.
we're just flagging our country. This happens all over the world. People colonize other areas, and then the culture that was there before tends to get diminished, if not demolished, moved away. The Osage people, not that different. They were based mainly in Kansas in around the early 1800s, and then they got, the government would come in, and because of things we were taught in high school, like Manifest Destiny and the Louisiana Purchase and Boone and what's his face, like going, the two.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. Anyway,
Yes.
It's just this idea like, well, we're supposed to just keep going and going till we hit the ocean. That's just how it is. And so people
And
just
nothing bad happened. The end.
It just had to. Anyway, in the mid to late 19th century, there was a civil war here in America. When the war was over, the South really was a total mess of their own doing. But a lot of people that lived in the South, especially if they were farmers, could not farm where they were because it was such a mess. So they started moving up north and middle America. And so in the 1870s, around then, people were going into Kansas like, ooh, look at all this flat land. We like flat land. We want to move here. And so the government was like, okie doke, we'll figure that out for you and we'll move people around. The Osage Nation was one of those tribes. So they were encouraged, kind of forced, to move to Oklahoma, which was very rocky and not very smooth. And the elders, they made a deal with the government. They took a certain amount, they took some like $1 an acre or whatever, and they were put in this one land. And it was in Oklahoma. And then the Osage, eventually, they called themselves like a county, like a region, the Osage region. But it turns out that the elders kind of knew what they were doing because they said, we don't want to own just the land on top. We want to own everything underneath it as well. So if you find gold or whatever, that's supposed to be ours, and then you have to pay us. And the government's like, they're not going to find any crap there. Fine. And then 1890s, oil was discovered. Just like the Beverly Hillbillies, like they found oil. It turns out it was worth about $400 million annually.
Woo!
So the Osage people were given they were called tribe heads. They were allowed, every person in the family was that was an Osage person, full blood. You had the right to the territory, so you had a vote. You had your own thing that you were given as a person, and you had that one. You were given like that one credit. If your parents died and they gave you the credits, then you had 3. You had yourself, and then you had theirs. What was happening was that also the government made it okay for we would just say interracial marriage, but you didn't have to be full-blooded Osage. If you married a white person or any other kind of person, you were now a couple. And the Osage person had that money, but it was technically for the both of you.
Okay.
So what's going on is at the Osage Nation, people are making the equivalent of $200,000 a year out of nowhere. So people started spending it like crazy. It was a free-for-all, basically. People some people, as it's like winning the lottery. Some people know to like pay your taxes, get it incorporated or whatever. Some people don't know that shit. And some of the people, the Osage people went kind of crazy and were buying multiple cars, and they didn't know how to keep the cars going. So the cars fell apart. They just left it in the bud and bought another car.
This is stuff that still happens, by the way.
It still happens. This is totally normal.
People are not taught. It's really not taught in school, like how to manage money. Right. And how to deal with your finances. So unless you come from money, where this is something that is constantly dealt with, you probably don't know what to do. And this is still a thing that say like people who sign like huge sports contracts.
Right.
Or rap, like not rap. I was going to say rap, but it's actually like any kind of musician.
Any musician. Yeah.
They sign these contracts. They get a shit ton of money. And then maybe they hire a business manager to help them, who probably rips them off. But like, they maybe do those sort of things, but they don't think about like paying their taxes, like what are the taxes on the like cars and property and the other things they buy, and then they blow through all that money and now they're fucked. And
everybody comes along too. Like they find the wealthy relative. Oprah talks about that. Like all of a sudden people who never had anything to do with her, all of a sudden they're showing up, and it doesn't seem like a big deal. Like if you have it and somebody needs like 20 grand because someone's sick and they need an operation, it's like sure. But then all of a sudden a lot of people in your life can start coming along. Right. And so and it wasn't so exactly. And it got into, so this is happening in the 1910s, 19-teens, just before World War I. There are some of them go to Europe and they're buying clothes right off of the Paris runways. Some of them take their kids with them on those trips. Some people, they just take these they tend to keep modest homes, but they will buy like furs, or they'll buy a nice car, or, and some people wear the latest fashions, and some people prefer to wear what they always wore or what's traditional. People are different. People have different responses. And yes, we don't have a hell of a lot of money literacy, correct. And especially then, like most people didn't know. But at one point in this part of the country, it was the wealthiest nation in the world. Okay. It was the wealthiest group of people. And there wasn't that many of them, but they just, each one, once again, had this allotment that they were entitled to when quarterly. It was quarterly. So some of the people are getting married, like I said, and they're developing and also what's happening is that people are moving into the area, bootleggers and ne'er-do-wells, and people that just flying through town, and people are setting up shops and then charging 5-10 times what they really cost because they know these people have money. Right. And they do that to the Osage people, not to the white people. It's like there's two different menu prices kind of thing. And there's people that there's still some racism. There's some Osage people, some didn't learn English because they were raised on a reservation or had to go to these schools. And so some of them don't learn their native language or they don't learn English. And so when you have that language, conflict.
The barrier.
The barrier, it can put you also at a disadvantage or to be taken advantage of. So what's happening is what people are getting, some people are moving in and some people are having a fine old life and they're traveling occasionally and they're able to take care of their elders and they're able to take care of people. Some people love to travel. Some people, for me, the thought of traveling in like 1910 is terrifying because, how are you going to get there and what happened?
Sounds terrible.
Yeah, sounds like it's too scary to me. But one of the people that lives there that is a white guy is William K. Hale. Robert De Niro plays him in the movie.
Okay.
And he is a man he's a white man with 2 nephews. He's originally from Texas. And he is the guy that there's something else I forgot to mention. Because of the spending, and there were all these stories coming out like, look at these people and they're spending these, and it was, I'm saying some offensive, but it was sort of like the redskin spending money.
Yes.
And, look what happens when you give certain people money. They don't know what to do with themselves. And they're infantilized. People treat people like children that they don't respect. So then the government actually set up a system of guardians to watch people to make sure that they're not going to get ripped off or they don't spend their money on crazy things. But who gets the guardianship and who doesn't? And there's a story in here about a man who served in World War I. He's like, I went to France to fight for this country and now I can't sign my own checks. And and what a shock. Those people got ripped off by people who just claim to be doing the right thing, the good thing.
Yes.
So this William K. Hale person has his 2 nephews and he's figuring out pretty quickly, if you start marrying into these families and that person dies, you get that money. These head rights, that's what they're called, excuse me. And that's from the Osage Act of 1906. There's 229 people, and they're making the equivalent about $200,000 a day. So if one of your parents dies, you get that one. And so it increases your money. So there's white people that are marrying Osage people. Some people fall in love, but some people do it for the money.
Right.
And this William K. Hale dude is a real asshole. He's the guy that, by the way, he doesn't just own a store, which once again has 2 different sets of prices. He's somebody that's also, he runs the mortuary. He helps with the detectives in town. He knows all the people at the newspapers. Like, he's that guy. He knows.
He's running the town.
He's running the town. So if he doesn't like something, he can make something happen.
Yes.
So when we're talking about the Osage murders, they apparently took place between 1918 and 1931. And people were shot, poisoned, strangled, stabbed, all kinds of things. And the death toll is above 60, but frankly, it could actually be in the hundreds.
Right.
Because so many people just disappeared.
And this is mainly women that were married off to dudes, or?
Yeah, it's easier to do that. We'll get to that.
Okay.
Because men are killed too, by the way.
Okay.
So it begins with, there's killings that happen. Once again, some people all of a sudden, they just die and they're like, oh, they have a wasting away disease, or they have this or that. They just were clumsy and they fell and oops, they fell on a knife, or this person, they just drank too
fell
much.
Into this knife 32 times.
Exactly.
He ran into my knife.
They actually ran themselves over with their cars. Yes. Like, there's all kinds of like crazy shit, and you can't prove it because once again, like, and there's no FBI, and at the time, when there was, they weren't really allowed to try murders. That wasn't considered a federal offense. That's more of a local thing. And when the local people own the town, who do you go to? Mm-hmm. So that's the whole reason why it was developed, was so people had this place to get justice. It starts with Charles Whitehorn in 1921. He full-blooded Osage. He was just he was from downtown Pawhuska. He was shot twice between the eyes, and his widow, Hattie, had married a disreputable man, Leroy Smitherman. They were in cahoots together, and they had him killed. Then there's a woman named Anna Brown, and there's 5 murders that are in particular that are really important. There's Anna Brown, Henry Rowan, Bill and Rita Smith, and Nettie Brookshire, who was their maid. So Anna is a beautiful Native American woman, and she's very traditional. She likes to wear the traditional garb. She's not flashy, but she likes her money. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's Molly. Her sister Anna, same thing, but she is divorced and likes to drink and dance and carouse with white men. It was written that she had.
Too.
Yeah, I know. She had, according to her servants, she had. Oh, there was a big deal, by the way, of like these native people that had white servants, and I would have them too if I were them. I'd be like, "Oh, Bessie O'Neill, come over." You could. It just reminds
Anna sounds like super fun to party with.
Anna's a hoot. It reminds me of Northern Exposure. Do you remember that episode, the Thanksgiving episode, where did you watch that show?
Yeah, I did. Not consistently. But.
They have indigenous people as part of the cast of the show, and on Thanksgiving Day, as part of the town, the indigenous people get to throw eggs at the white people. And everyone just is a good sport about it because, like, okay, that's
By
fair.
the way, I'm fine with this.
I'm totally fine with this.
We could still do this. You want to throw eggs at me on Thanksgiving? Knock yourself out.
I'm fine with that. An Irish girl, as Bessie O'Neill. Yes,
I'll dress up as bacon if it makes it easier for you. Whatever.
So there's Anna, there's Molly, there's Lizzie, who's the mother, and there's Minnie. It gets a little confusing because there are a lot of M names. Minnie was just 27 when she died, and she was in excellent health. And then they said she had a confounding disease. Oops, we don't know what's wrong with her. Anna was 34 at the time of her death. She was divorced. She had taken to drinking, dancing, and carousing until the sun rose. And according to her servant, who also said she had very loose morals with white men.
Anna was up all night to get lucky.
Up all night, sleep all day. She loved jazz clubs. She would go to Kansas City and have some fun. She loved bootleg whiskey. Also, so Molly was married to William K. Hale's nephew, Ernest. And Ernest Burkhart was his nephew, and that he's played by Leonardo DiCaprio. Sorry.
DiCaprio.
He plays her. I'm sorry. I'm just.
Okay.
And then I was just. Sorry, I don't have
It's okay.
the cast list in front of me. I wanted to get the name of the woman who's the lead.
Oh, it's Lily Gladstone?
Thank you. She's getting tons of great reviews. So she's Molly in the movie. So Lily Gladstone plays Molly. Molly is married to Ernest. Ernest is the nephew of William K. Mm-hmm. Okay? King Hill. Sorry, his middle name is King. And he thinks he's like the king, by the way, of Osage and thinks he's a big deal. Robert De Niro plays him once again. So one night, Anna visits occasionally, but she likes to go out drinking. Molly's living with her husband, and she has her mother, and they have 2 kids with them, and then she has her elderly mother living with them. Mm-hmm. Molly comes over for a party. I'm sorry, Anna comes over, and it's a daytime party, and Anna shows up, and she's wasted, and Molly's pissed.
Been there.
Yes. But she leaves and her sister is saying, like, dude, get your shit together, basically. Like, come on. Mm-hmm. I have guests over. My racist mother-in-law is giving me a hard time. Like, don't give people fodder. Don't.
Shit, been there too.
Yes.
Damn. Feeling very, very relatable.
Do you feel seen? So Ernest offers to drop Molly off at home. And he also has a brother named Brian. So they're taking her home. I'm sorry, Anna home. And Anna just disappears.
Okay.
And then a week later, her body's found. And at first, they decide, she just drank herself to death and fell in the water. She's like by this creek bed.
Okay.
But the autopsy showed that she had 2 bullets in her head.
Yeah, that's not drowning. That's
Yeah. So the king of the Osage Hills, I'm sorry. Did you just hear that? My Alexa just went off. The king of the Osage County. Anyway, he was saying, "Oh, we're going to find, people, we're going to find who did this." But he had absolutely no interest because, spoiler, he's the one that's taking advantage of all these people. He encouraged his nephew to marry Molly so that he would get her head right. So he would get that money. And he just went along with it because he was kind of a sad sack and a sap. That's what he says. All right. Lizzie gets weaker and weaker, and they also has a disease and she's old. She's like 60. So that's definitely older for the time 100 years ago.
Yeah.
But she's one of those people, like, she was really sharp and she was declining a bit, but not wasting away. And then boom, she's dead. And they couldn't figure out. And so all this is happening very quickly. There's a man named William Stepson who is a steer roper who one day just like suffocated. He fell over into convulsions, and it turns out he had strychnine poisoning.
Oh my God.
Then there's a man named there's a few killings. In August of 1922, there was one guy that was like a true friend to all the Osage people, a white man, who was an oilman and was very, very wealthy. And he said, "Oh, I've got some friends from World War I." He had some friends that were in Washington, in D.C. He says, "I bet I can get them to help us." And so because it's all these deaths are happening. Like I said, it's just one after the other. Entire families are starting to get picked off and wiped out. And this King Hale guy is like getting all the money. One of the people that he has killed, he put $25,000 life insurance on him and just collects the insurance. By the way, some of the people that are killed, Hale is just getting their money. He says, "Nope, that belongs to me now." And then they just hand him like $25,000, which is an enormous sum of money.
Because he's just running the town, so they're just doing what he says, no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, he comes in and says, "Oh, I've got paperwork. Like that person, that belongs to me. They sent that to me, or this person owed me money, and so I need this." He just got it. I mean, people didn't really fight him.
Yeah, that's fucking bananas. Like that he could just do that, and people are like, what?
He was the undertaker. Yeah. And he was the guy that ran the store, and he knew everybody, and he had a lot of money himself because he was accumulating this wealth.
Yes.
And so people are scared to speak up because they don't want to they don't want to be next.
Yeah. They're afraid.
So Barney McBride, he goes to DC. He's talking to his friends, and he's hanging around like, "Hey, do you hear about these murders? Like, this is going on. We think it's an inside job. We think there's somebody that's killing these people." And he's at a billiards club having drinks with some dudes, and he steps outside the club to smoke or whatever. And one of the dudes that he was shooting billiards with puts a burlap sack around his head and then stabs him 20 times in order to get the attention of the press. So this was something that would go back to Oklahoma.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, there's another case in February, a few months later, February of 23. The body of Henry Rowan was found. He was married. He had 2 kids. He was 40 years old, and he was just found slumped over in his car, shot in the back of the head. And once again, Hale came up and said, "Oh, I'm his best friend." He was like the mayor of Fairfax.
Oh my God!
And got his money. And he got his money. He was able to talk. Rowan's wife was having an affair, and the guy that she's having an affair with, like Rowan had threatened him, so he had Rowan killed, but Hale got the money once again, $25,000. There's Bill and Rita Smith. So Bill was and some people have I'm just going to say white names. I mean,
Yeah.
it's some people are Osage, but but sometimes people change their last names. And all backgrounds, people do Italian, whatever.
Yes.
But he went to the town council and he said, I think there's this evil spirit that's invading our community. And one of the people, he goes to a town hall to talk about everything that's happening. And one of the people said, maybe it's an evil spirit. And he's like, no, the evil spirit is in human form. And when he said to name the murderer, he wouldn't say who it was, but he had a suspicion. And so Bill was with his wife, Rita, at home. And they had a white servant, 17-year-old Nettie Brookshire. And that night they're in their home, and at 3 a.m, they hear a blast, and the house is just decimated with, it was a nitroglycerin blast. So everything. And it was like arms and legs and body parts like strewn.
That's awful. This is awful.
And so Rita and Nettie died right away. Bill actually hung on for a few days. So he said, they got Rita, and now they're coming to get me. Mm-hmm. And once again, people are like, we've got to get help. And so they go back to D.C., and J. Edgar Hoover, who was 30 years old and was a good administrator. He liked that stuff, but he wasn't exactly like a crack investigator. He was kind of weird.
Right.
But he wanted he had an idea and a vision of what the FBI could be in the future, because cars were becoming a daily occurrence. People were buying motor cars. That's why the oil prices were going up. He just realized people were going to travel a lot interstate, and they're going to be criming. And so you need this federal agency to be able to watch that. So he hires a guy from Texas named Tom White, and Tom White comes to investigate all these killings. And what he does is he brings together a group of people, and they work from the inside. So he hires guys. One's going to act like a rancher. One's going to act like a hobo. That's the wording of the time. One is a person who is of indigenous people descent, but not Osage, but he comes into the town. And they start asking questions. They're gathering information, and they're finding out that Hale is pretty much the linchpin for all this. He is the person that is causing all this damage, and that he talked his nephew into marrying Molly. And Molly is also getting sick at this time. And she has diabetes, and her husband is like taking care of her with diabetes, but she realizes, like, I don't think this guy is looking out for me. I think, and so she was a Catholic, by the way, and she tells her priest, I'm really worried. I keep feeling worse. And my mother died. My sisters died. Like, everyone's dying. Am I dying too? And he says, what does he give you to drink? And she's like, well, we have whiskey at night. He's like, all right, no more whiskey. Don't drink anything that he gives you. And she gets better. And that's when she realizes her husband was poisoning her. And they had, once again, 2 small kids.
Awful.
So it's one of the reasons why people in the community, and she was very well liked, by the way. Mm-hmm. So the Department of Justice finally does something about it, and they just decide we're gonna put these people on trial. This Hale guy, everyone is talking about him. Ernest pretty much confesses pretty quickly and says, look, I didn't want to. They made me, that kind of thing. And over the years between 1926 and 1929, it's just a total fucking shit show as far as it's the trials. Witnesses are being intimidated. It's they have mistrials. They have jury tampering. They have people threatening the jury. They have jury people that are being paid. It's a total fucking mess. But essentially, the 3 main dudes that were a part of it were convicted. They were given life sentences. But here's the thing about life sentences at the time. Life sentence was really more like a few years. And none of them served more than 20 years for their time. Once again, these are dozens of people were killed.
So fucked up that it took that long.
Yeah. Ernest says he confesses and he says, "Oh, please send me to jail. I deserve it. But please don't send me to Leavenworth because that's the prison in Kansas, or the jail in Kansas, or prison. Because that's where Hale's going to be." And he's like, "They'll kill me if you send me there." And they're like, "Fine." So they send him to another prison. Hale goes to Leavenworth, and who turns out to be his warden but Tim White, the guy that worked for the FBI that had him arrested. So he went from being an investigator, he went from being a cop to an investigator to a prison warden, and then he worked on a parole board after that. This guy's whole life was about crime from beginning to end.
Well, it sounds like he really was just following Hale around from thing to thing to thing. Like, wherever you go, I will be deciding your fate.
Pretty much. When he goes, so they all go to jail for certain different amounts of time, and they all get paroled at a certain point. Ernest actually asked for a pardon because he later said that he was cajoled into participating and he didn't kill anybody directly. And, it was, I wasn't my fault. I was just a patsy or whatever. And he actually was paroled. But the other guy, he was actually pardoned and paroled. They all eventually got out. I mean, some were killed young, some got to live to an old age. Molly,
he shouldn't have been pardoned. That's not
no,
right.
Isn't that fucked up? I mean, it's completely fucked up.
I'm too dumb to be in charge. Come on, give me a pardon. Nah, fuck that.
Yeah, fuck that guy. So Molly divorces him. Good for her.
I should hope so.
She remarries, and it's a happy marriage, but she dies a few years after that, just to other causes, not because of this.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's just this very big overhead look at this.
Yeah.
And I'm dying to see this movie. There's so much more I could go to, but I think they're going to do that in the film, and I kind of want to see it for myself. But it's just it's hubris, it's racism. It's got everything. Murder, it's got everything.
This film has everything. It's got Robert De Niro, Leonardo DiCaprio, Brendan Fraser.
Brendan Fraser's in this movie. I'm dying to know who he plays.
Jesse Plemons. Jesse
Plemons plays the FBI guy. He's always fantastic. So I think it's going to be amazing. This is one of the first cases of the FBI. It was a big deal for them to seal the deal. I mean, they could have done better, and there's a lot of people that a lot of murders they didn't solve.
Yeah.
But and the people, so also what happened in Congress is that it became a law that only Osage people can get this money. So it doesn't matter if you get married to somebody, like you have to be full-blooded. So that's another thing. Anyway, That's our creep this week, the Osage Indian Murders and William King Hale. Fuck that guy.
Seriously, fuck that guy. Good job, my friend.
Thank you.
It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a really interesting story, and it makes me excited to see the movie. No, we are not being paid for this by Apple.
I wish.
I would love some of that sweet, sweet Apple TV money, but it is not happening. Good job, my friend.
Thank you, my friend.
Would you like to hear some non-creepy things?
Yes, please.
Okay. I mean, we're in the middle of something really fucking creepy in the world. And I'm sure everybody knows that there's, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that is happening. It's awful. It's fucking terrible, basically. Surprise, hot take, everybody. We think it's fucking terrible. But as usual, when things like this happen, like, I tend to feel very helpless, and then I look like, how can I help? So I looked up some organizations that help Israeli and Palestinian victims and animals in the area. So here's just a list of a few places. These are like not political. They are not picking sides. These are like independent, impartial organizations that are helping victims of the conflict. I mean, especially like civilian conflict, people who are impacted by this. So couple of places you could donate to, and we're going to link to them in our show notes. So the first one is Doctors Without Borders.
Yes, I like Doctors Without Borders.
Yeah, non-governmental, independent, impartial, neutral. They're just there to help people. Again, we're going to have links in the show notes. The International Committee of the Red Cross, they would love to, like everyone, we all want an end to the violence. They are there helping victims on both sides, civilians, whatever, like everybody. There is the Save the Children organization that's specifically like helping children that are impacted in the conflict. This is one of my consistent donations, is the International Rescue Committee. They come in during these kind of humanitarian crises and help people, get through it and help them rebuild after. So that's a great one to donate to. And then I looked up a couple of animal organizations in the area. So there's one called the Salula Animal Rescue. They are the only animal rescue organization that's on the Gaza Strip. They've been there since 2006, and they're taking in animals. Like, you can go to the website and donate. There's the Animal and Environment Association Bethlehem Shelter, and they are providing treatment for dogs and cats and other injured animals.
No,
it's really sad, y'all. It's fucking terrible. And then there is the SPCA Israel. They are there as well, and they are taking in injured animals, or just animals that are abandoned and things like that. And they're trying to take care of them, and then they want to help find them new homes, as quickly as possible. So you could donate to that. Those three, it's all going to be in the show notes. So those are our, like, not creepy things that you can do if you're feeling a little hopeless and helpless right now, which I think a lot of us are.
Good job, Sonia. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. Okay, to change the subject, just to pivot a little bit.
Yeah.
If you like the sound of our voices and you like to hear about cheesy movies at Halloween time, this is the show for you. We co-host a show called Dorking Out, where we dork out about movies. In October, we love to talk about scary movies. Sonia, What are we talking about next?
We are going to do A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors.
Dream Warriors.
I watched it last night. This movie's bananas. It's going to be so fun to talk about. I know that, like, I don't know about other people, but when my anxiety is kind of higher than usual, I actually find, like, scary movies to be really helpful. Some people have told me they think that's kind of weird. I don't think it's weird at all. It's like, I don't know, it's like a release.
Yes, so, definitely. Same.
I don't know how scary Dream Warriors is, but it'll be fun to talk about.
Excellent.
For sure. Yes.
All right. So if you can give us your suggestions, everything we mentioned at the top of the show, your ideas for creeps and for non-creeps, reach out to us. We love it when you use the Annie Potts gift. We got one from Ghostbusters. Or just be clever. Think of something on your own. I know not everybody's into Ghostbusters. Don't know why, but okay. Some people just aren't.
Sounds wrong, but whatever. You do you.
You do you, booze. All right. And once again, also, our email is whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com. And if you would like some stickers, send us your address. Sonia, where can they find you?
You can find me at thesoniashow.com and The Sonia Show on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky, Threads, TikTok, all the places. Wherever you want to be, I'm there being a psycho. And where can people find you, Margot?
I'm at Brooklyn Margot on Twitter, on TikTok, on Blue Sky. I'm at Brooklyn Fit Chick for Threads, Instagram, and that's my site. All right, everybody. Once again, thank you so much. And we understand what's going on in the world. Just please, whatever you do, just stay safe, be kind. Don't be a creep.
Be a creep. Thank you for listening to us talk about creeps. You can follow us at What a Creep Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
But don't follow us too closely.
You can email us your creepy stories at whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com.
But please keep your dick pics to yourself.